My name is Patricia Gailey. I'm with Abolish Slavery Kentucky. We are the Kentucky arm of the Abolish Slavery National Network, which is a network across the nation that is working to change the exception clauses in a lot of constitutions. Our Kentucky Constitution in Article 1, Section 25 says, slavery and involuntary servitude in the state are prohibited except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. Now note, please, that slavery and involuntary servitude, according to the UN Declaration of Human Rights, are crimes against humanity. And these are at the core of our criminal justice system in Kentucky. We need to change this. Some good work has been done. The Department of Corrections has a mission statement to, and this is a piece of that mission statement, provide a safe, secure, and humane environment for staff and offenders in carrying out the mandates of the legislative and judicial processes. However, what happens is, and you can see on your handouts, this handout, that at the core, underlying that wonderful statement of goodness is crimes against humanity, slavery and involuntary servitude, which can filter up through the system, creating destruction of health, exploitation of resources, exploitation of labor, destruction of family, destruction of self-agency, destruction of dignity, corruption, inhumane conditions, unsafe conditions, PTSD, increase in addictions, recidivism, all kinds of things that we don't really want, right? So those are the possibilities, and we can't say that they're not happening because we've never been in a state without slavery right now, without involuntary servitude. From day one, prior to our first Constitution, this state has been a slave state. We need to change that. Abraham Lincoln tried to change it, but he was not able to. But these words in our Constitution mean something. And especially since they're in our Constitution, a lot of people say, well, if it's in the Constitution, it must be okay, right? No, it's not. It's just because we haven't paid attention before, and it's time to pay attention now. What other words in our Constitution are thought to be so insignificant that we could set that aside? None. We're talking about crimes against humanity here in our state. Until we remove this clause, because it's in our Constitution, we are all complicit in crimes against humanity. And I'm not okay with that. And I think that our conscientious lawmakers, if they stop to think about it, they would not be okay with that either. We need to move this legislation forward, and we need to do it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. My name is Savvy Shabazz. I'm president of All of Us at None Louisville chapter. I'm also a formerly incarcerated person that is directly impacted by the involuntary servitude and slavery clause in our state's constitution. While incarcerated, I experienced working for wages as low as 63 cents a day, $12.50 a month, and sometimes lesser amounts than those. The presence of the slavery clause and involuntary servitude in Kentucky's Constitution perpetuates a painful legacy of oppression and dehumanization. It serves as a stark reminder of a dark chapter in our nation's history when the fundamental rights of certain individuals like myself were systemically denied based on race. While slavery may be abolished long ago, its lingering presence in our Constitution symbolizes a persistent inequality that could not be ignored. We need to be the first to lead the way, and we need to abolish slavery in this state. Thank you.
Do you want to open the question?
Yeah, if you have any.
Okay.
Apologize. about that. Like I said, he was running behind. Do you have any questions for these two? And then he will speak when he gets here.
That would be fine.
I have a press release to hand out to all of you all that has their names and things and information.
You said you experienced this firsthand. Can you share a bit more about your experience?
Yes. Again, I'm a formerly incarcerated person. I was sentenced to a total of 28 years. I served 6.5 years in 9 different institutions in the state of Kentucky. I remember being sent out of a halfway house in Louisville to do demolition work for one of the nation's largest contributors to our community. And they had just received a $3.5 million grant to do the demolition work, and they paid us 63 cents per day to do the demolition work. We talk about reentry. Part of reentering into our society is to make sure that we are prepared to take care of ourselves and our families. So pay us a livable wage. What happens if I lose a limb while building or working inside of the institution? How will I take care of myself and my family once I'm released? So if we're really talking about reentry, we have to remove that involuntary servitude and slavery clause and do what's right in Kentucky.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Shabazz, Ms. Gailey, for your standing in for me in my tardiness in getting here. But thank you to the press. Thank you all for being here today. This is a very important piece of legislation, House Bill 121. We want to get everybody's input and information out there to the people of the Commonwealth. House Bill 121 is a constitutional amendment to take out chapter 25 of the Kentucky State Constitution, which piggybacks on the 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. And it said that slavery was abolished, but they put a piece in there that said that except for crime or punishment for a criminal, that they could be in involuntary servitude. So that's the reason for this piece of legislation, which is long overdue. And I hope that you all get the message out there to the people of the Commonwealth, how important this is. And we ask all people of the Commonwealth to contact their member of the House and their member of the Senate to talk about how important it is that we roll this back. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery for all intents and purposes, but slavery still continues. And I think Mr. Shabazz's story speaks to that, how this is still being done, that people who are incarcerated are put into indentured servitude. And we need to change that. That needs to change. I would like to have you all make reference to a movie that starred Lawrence, what's his name? Fishburne. No, not Lawrence Fishburne. Doggone it. Senior moment. No. Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy. The movie is called Life. I would hope that you all would tie into that movie and make that movie something that you all report on, so people can go look at that movie. That essentially is talking about involuntary servitude as a result of punishment for a crime. And in the movie, they did not commit the crime, but they still suffered from the involuntary servitude, being imprisoned in the involuntary servitude. So again, thank you all for being here, and we'll take any questions that you all may have. Yes, ma'am.
What conversations are you having with your colleagues? Are you getting a sense of if there's appetite to pass it?
Well, I filed this the first week of session and have not had conversation with any of my colleagues outside the Democratic caucus. But my hope is that we'll have conversation with those members across the aisle. This is the 21st century. The 13th Amendment was filed or passed, adopted in 1865. Do the math as to how many years we're talking about. It was done in the late 19th century. We're now in the early 21st century. So that needs to change.
Has any other states passed similar legislation?
You would ask me that. I do know we always make reference to Tennessee. Tennessee has passed the legislation.
I can say
Okay.
that. Yeah, 9 other states have done this. Rhode Island did it first. They did it right the first time around, so they have never had to even change their constitution. And since then, let's see if I can remember them all. Colorado, Kansas, Utah, Oregon, Vermont, Tennessee, Alabama, and Vermont. And Nevada. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, and at this time, Kentucky, because I'm working with this national network, I meet with people from across the nation who are doing this. So there are, I think, 14 active campaigns in other states. I might be able to remember them all, but some states kind of come and go sometimes because of different situations that come up. So I know that New Jersey is working on it, Virginia is working on it, North Carolina is working on it, South Carolina is working on it, Georgia is working on it. We are working on it. New Mexico is working on it. California is working on it. Wisconsin, Michigan. I've lost track. There may be one or two others too. Thank you.
Why do you think states are looking to do this now? Like, what prompted this?
It's about what's fairness, about what's fair. Slavery was an abominable institution, and we are still enslaving people in the year 2025, and that's something that should not happen. It is, we need to move into the 21st century. This was at the end of the 18th century that the 13th Amendment was passed, was ratified, but it was ratified with the caveat that, with the exception that slavery was disallowed except as punishment for a crime. And what happens for people that are in the situation where they have where they have a crime, they've served their time, they've paid their restitution, and I think Mr. Shabazz probably has spoken to that.
Yes.
You want to speak to that again?
Yes. So again, I am a formerly incarcerated person. So I have been dealing with involuntary servitude and abolishing the slavery. Like, I actually lived it, right? And it's time, right? Paying people 63 cents per day and sometimes less for hard labor. Again, like you said, it's not fair, right? How do you prepare individuals that are coming home to their families and communities by paying them 63 cents per day, right? Benefits, livable working wage. This is what we talk here. We should be talking that talk inside as well, getting people prepared to come home to their families and communities.
So, Mr. Shabazz, with the constitutional amendment you passed, automatically change the Department of Corrections when it comes to low pay, or is this kind of a segue to hopefully other legislation around prison reform?
This is a segue that opens up the door. The first thing we want to do, we want to strike out that clause. We don't want to be a slave state. We're not. So we have to move that first and get that out of our Constitution. Then it opens up the doors to talk about this, for a segue to go in and talk about prison reform as well.
Any more questions? I've got a copy of the press release and a presentation from Ms. Gailey as well. That's some talking points. Easiest way maybe.
It's funny.
Yeah, it is funny, but it's real. And that's a real prison. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you so much.
Yeah. We will be looking at, in the session, when we come back on the 4th, to make sure that we push this piece of proposed legislation, this House Bill 121, to not only the members of the caucus, and we hope they will, the Democratic caucus, we hope they will sign on to this piece of legislation, and we'll be looking for members of the majority party to solicit their support as well. The reason for this conference, this press conference, is that I filed a bill last year. It did not get moved to committee, and consequently the bill died. So I hope that you all in the press will send this information out, make sure this information gets out, so that we can have a different outcome this year. At least it gets to committee, and we have a chance for Ms. Gailey and Mr. Shabazz to speak in committee, and maybe some other people that will come forward with real life stories of how this has affected their lives and made them second-class citizens, if you will. Any more questions? Thank you all very much for coming and for covering this press conference.